The ship was dying. Commander Riven knew this truth as she stood on the bridge of the quiet dawn, watching the emergency lights flicker like tired eyes. Her wings, once bright and beautiful, now hung flat against her back. She had not slept in 3 days. 47 cycles had passed since the accident. 47 cycles of floating through empty space, waiting for help that never came. The Quiet Dawn was a research vessel, built for studying distant stars, not for survival. Now it drifted through the hollow expanse like a leaf on a dark river. Riven looked at her crew. 12 souls depended on her. 12 lives that she had promised to bring home safely. That promise felt like a stone in her chest now. They were a proud species. They had traveled among the stars for thousands of years. Their ships were fast and their technology was advanced. But none of that mattered when your engines were dead and your air was running out. "Commander," said a soft voice behind her. Riven turned to see her youngest pilot. The girl was barely past her first molt, still new to space travel. Her large compound eyes reflected the dim emergency lights, making her look even younger and more afraid. "What is it?" Riven asked gently. "I have been monitoring all communication channels," said. "There is still no response to our distress signal." Riven nodded slowly. She had expected this answer, but it still hurt to hear it. They had sent their call for help to everyone. The Galactic Collective, the great alliance of spacefaring species, had received their message. So had the Empire and the Syndicate. All of them had the ships and the power to save the Quiet Dawn. None of them had come. The Galactic Collective had sent a polite message explaining that the hollow expanse was too dangerous for rescue missions. The Empire had simply ignored them. The Syndicate had calculated the cost of rescue and decided it was not worth the expense. 12 lives were not profitable enough to save. Riven walked to the main window and looked out at the stars. They were beautiful, she thought. Cold and distant, but beautiful. She wondered if those stars would be the last thing her crew ever saw. "How much air do we have left?" she asked. 18 hours, replied her chief engineer. He was older, his wings from years of work. His voice was calm, but Riven could see the fear in his eyes. "Maybe 20 if we reduce activity and lower the temperature." 20 hours, less than a single day. After that, the air would run out and they would simply fall asleep and never wake up. It was not a terrible way to die, Riven supposed, but it was still death. She thought about her family back home. Her partner, waiting by the window each night, hopping to see her ship return. Her children, too young to understand why their mother had not come back. Would they remember her face when they grew older? Would they know that she had tried her best to survive? "Keep sending the distress signal," Riven ordered. "On every frequency, in every language we know." Commander said quietly, "No one is listening." "Then we will make them listen," Riven replied. We do not give up." But even as she spoke those brave words, doubt filled her heart. The universe was vast and cold. Their little ship was nothing but a speck of dust in an ocean of darkness. Who would notice if they disappeared? Who would care? Hours passed. The crew sat in silence, conserving their energy and their air. Some prayed to old gods. Others wrote final messages to their families, recording their voices on data crystals that might never be found. Stayed at her station, watching the communication screens with tired eyes. Then something happened. A light blinked on the console. At first she thought it was a malfunction. The equipment had been failing for days, but the light kept blinking, steady and strong. "Commander," said, her voice trembling, "I am receiving a transmission." Riven rushed to her side. "From who?" "The Collective, the Empire." Shook her head. "I do not know, the language is strange, I have never heard it before." She activated the translation matrix, the computer that could decode almost any known language in the galaxy. The machine struggled with the strange sounds, clicks and consonants that seemed rough and primitive compared to speech. Finally, words appeared on the screen. Unknown vessel, this is Captain of the freighter Hope. I received your distress signal. Hold tight. I am coming to get you. Riven read the message 3 times. She did not understand. One ship, one person, coming to rescue them when entire empires had refused. Who are these creatures? Asked, reading over her shoulder. The translation matrix identifies them as humans, said. From a planet called Earth. They are a new species. They have only been traveling among the stars for a short time. A young species, sounded doubtful. Coming into the hollow expanse, they must be foolish. Or brave, Riven said softly. She looked at the message again. The words were simple and direct. No calculations about cost, no excuses about danger, just a promise. I am coming to get you. For the first time in 47 cycles, Commander Riven felt something she had almost forgotten. Hoping. She pressed the communication button and spoke carefully, hoping the strange humans could understand her translated words. Captain, this is Commander Riven of the Quiet Dawn. We are 12 souls. Our air is running out. Please hurry. The response came quickly, as if the human had been waiting by her radio. Hang on, Commander. Help is on the way. Riven looked at her crew. They were all staring at her, their eyes wide with surprise and confusion. A species they had never met was coming to save them. It seemed impossible. It seemed like a dream. But sometimes, in the darkest moments, dreams were all you had left. The Hope was not a beautiful ship. Its hull was covered with patches and repairs from 100 different journeys. The paint had faded long ago, and rust spots decorated the cargo bay doors like old battle scars. Some people might have called it ugly. Captain called it home. She sat in the pilot's seat, her fingers moving across the controls with the ease of long practice. The distress signal played again on her speakers, a strange melody of clicks and hums that sounded almost like music. Somewhere out there, in the darkness between stars, 12 beings were dying, and she was going to save them. Stood behind her, his arms crossed over his chest. He was a big man with a serious face and gray hair at his temples. He had been a soldier once, fighting in wars on distant moons. Now he was her co-pilot, her friend, and sometimes her conscience. He said carefully, "We need to talk about this." "What is there to talk about?" she replied without looking away from the controls. "That signal is coming from the hollow expanse. You know what that place is. No stations, no help, no way out if something goes wrong." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Every pilot with half a brain stays away from there." Smiled. "Good thing I only have a quarter of a brain then." Did not smile back. "I am serious. If we go in there and our engine fails, we are dead. If we run out of fuel, we are dead. If we meet the—" He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Finally turned to face him. Her eyes were dark brown, warm but determined. There was no fear in them, only purpose. "I heard their voices. They are scared. They are running out of air, and no one else is coming. That is not our problem. It is now." Sighed deeply. He had known for 6 years. He had watched her rescue stranded miners from a collapsing asteroid. He had seen her fly through a solar storm to deliver medicine to a dying colony. She was stubborn, reckless, and completely impossible to argue with. He loved her like a sister, and he would follow her anywhere. "Fine," he said at last, "but if we die out there, I am blaming you." "Fair enough," replied with a grin. "Now help me plot a course." In the cargo bay below was already preparing for the rescue. He was the youngest member of the crew, only 24 years old, with messy black hair and oil stains on his hands. He had joined the Hope 2 years ago, a fresh graduate from an engineering school on Mars. Since then, he had fixed everything from broken engines to leaking toilets. Now he was packing supplies for a species he had never seen. "Oxygen converters," he muttered to himself, checking items off a list. "Portable power cells, medical kits, water purifiers, food. Wait, what do they even eat?" He pressed the intercom button. "Captain, do we know anything about these aliens? What they breathe? What they eat? Whether they will try to kill us when we show up?" His voice crackled through the speaker. "The translation computer says they are called species. They breathe a mix of nitrogen and oxygen similar to us. As for eating," she paused, "pack everything. We will figure it out." Shook his head but smiled. That was such a typical answer. She never worried about problems until they were right in front of her, and somehow she always found a way to solve them. He looked around the cargo bay at the piles of equipment. It was not much. The Hope was a freighter, not a rescue ship. They carried cargo between planets, not emergency supplies, but they would make do. They always did. The ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, and the stars outside the windows stretched into long lines of light. The hollow expanse was 3 days away at maximum speed. 3 days to prepare for something they had never done before. Spent those days studying everything she could find about the Galactic database had limited information. They were an old species, one of the first to travel among the stars. They had wings like insects and communicated through a complex language of sounds and gestures. They were scientists, explorers, peaceful by nature. And right now, they were completely alone. She thought about what it said. It was not their problem. He was right in a way. They were strangers. They came from a different world with different customs and different gods. They had never met humans before and might not even like them. But none of that mattered too. She remembered a story her grandmother had told her when she was young. Long ago, on Earth, a great ship had sunk in a cold ocean. Hundreds of people had fallen into the freezing water, crying for help. Some boats came to rescue them. Other boats did not, afraid of being pulled down by desperate hands. Her grandmother had always asked the same question: which boat would you be on? Knew her answer, she had always known. On the 3rd day, the Hope dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the hollow expanse. Through the window, could see nothing but empty darkness. No stars, no planets, just an endless void that seemed to swallow all light. "There," said, pointing at the scanner, "I have found their ship." A small dot appeared on the screen, drifting alone in the black. The quiet dawn, 12 souls waiting to be saved. Took a deep breath. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady on the controls. This was the moment she had been preparing for. "Quiet Dawn, this is Captain of the Hope," she said into the radio. "I can see you. I am coming." The reply came immediately, a voice filled with hope and disbelief. "Captains, thank you for coming." Smiled, "Save your thanks for later. We still have work to do." She pushed the throttle forward, and the Hope flew toward the dying ship like a small star burning against the darkness. Behind her, and prepared for the rescue. They did not know what waited for them on that alien vessel. They did not know if they would succeed or fail, but they knew one thing for certain. They were not going to let those 12 souls die alone. Because that was what humans did. They answered the call. Commander Riven watched through the observation window as the human ship approached. It was smaller than she had expected, much smaller than the Quiet Dawn. The hull was covered with patches and old repairs, like a garment worn by a poor traveler. She could not understand how such a fragile-looking vessel had survived the journey through the hollow expanse. "They are requesting permission to dock," reported from her station. Riven hesitated. Every rule she had learned told her to be careful. Unknown species could carry diseases. They could be pirates pretending to be rescuers. They could have weapons hidden in their cargo bays. Trust was a dangerous thing in the cold universe. But what choice did she have? Her crew had 12 hours of air left, maybe less. "Open the starboard airlock," she ordered. The crew gathered in the corridor near the docking port. Some held tools that could be used as weapons just in case. Others simply stood and waited, too tired and hungry to do anything else. The air was thin now, and breathing had become difficult. Every movement felt like swimming through water. The airlock hissed as pressure equalized between the two ships. Then the door slid open. Riven had imagined many things about the humans. She had pictured them as tall warriors with sharp teeth, or perhaps as small creatures with many arms like The reality surprised her completely. Three beings stood in the airlock. They were shorter than, with soft skin and no wings at all. They had only 2 arms and 2 legs, and their faces were flat with strange round eyes. They wore simple clothing, nothing like the ceremonial armor of or the flowing robes of the collective delegates. The one in front was a female. She had black hair tied behind her head and eyes the color of dark wood. Her hands were raised, palms facing outward in what seemed to be a gesture of peace. "Hello," she said, her voice warm despite the cold metal walls around them. "I am Captain. We are here to help." Riven stepped forward slowly. Up close, she could see that the human female was tired. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her clothing was wrinkled from long hours of travel, but her smile was genuine and kind. "I am Commander Riven," she said carefully. You really came." "We said we would," replied simply. Behind her, the 2 human males began unloading equipment from their ship. The bigger one carried heavy boxes with ease, his muscles straining against his shirt. The younger one immediately approached the nearest wall panel and began examining the technology with curious eyes. "Your life support is almost dead," said, not looking up from his work. "The filtration system is clogged and your power cells are drained, but I think I can fix it. I just need to understand how your systems work." The chief engineer stepped forward hesitantly. He was not sure if he should trust these strange creatures with his ship. But the young human looked at him with such honest curiosity that he could not refuse. "I will show you," said. "Follow me." The next few hours were unlike anything they had ever experienced. The humans worked without rest, asking questions and learning fast, crawled through narrow maintenance tunnels, connecting cables from the Hope to the Quiet Dawn's failing systems, carried oxygen tanks and distributed them to crew members who were struggling to breathe, and moved from person to person, checking on everyone with gentle words and a kind touch. She found a young male sitting alone in a corner, his wings wrapped around himself like a blanket. His breathing was shallow and weak. Without hesitation, knelt beside him and placed an oxygen mask over his face. "Breathe slowly," she said softly. "You are going to be okay." The young looked at her with confused eyes. "Why?" he whispered. "Why are you helping us? You do not know us. We are nothing to you." Was quiet for a moment. She adjusted the oxygen flow and made sure the mask was secure before answering. "A long time ago," she said, "my grandfather was a fisherman on Earth. One night there was a terrible storm. His boat sank and he fell into the ocean. He was sure he was going to die." She paused, remembering the story she had heard so many times as a child. But another boat came. A stranger who did not know him, who had no reason to risk his life, turned his boat around and pulled my grandfather from the water. She smiled at the young. "My grandfather asked the same question you asked. Why? And the stranger said something I have never forgotten. He said that the ocean is dark and cold, and the only light we have is each other." Had been listening nearby. She approached carefully, her wings folded in respect. "Captain, I do not understand your people. The Galactic Collective has rules, they have honor codes, they have profit calculations. Everything they do has a reason, a logic we can understand." She tilted her head, studying his face. "But you came into the darkness with no promise of reward. You are risking your lives for strangers. What drives you to do this?" Thought about the question. It was a good question, one that humans themselves sometimes struggled to answer. "I think," she said slowly, "that humans are afraid of the dark. We come from a planet where the nights were long and full of danger. We learned early that we could not survive alone, so we built fires and gathered around them together. We told stories to keep the fear away. We helped each other because helping others made us less afraid." She looked around at the crew, at their tired faces and hopeful eyes. The universe is a very big darkness, much bigger than any night on Earth, and your distress signal was like a voice crying out in that darkness. How could we not answer? Commander Riven had been listening silently. Now she stepped forward and placed her hand on shoulder, a gesture of deep respect among the. "You are a strange species, Captain," she said, "but I think the galaxy needs more strangeness like yours." Laughed softly, "We prefer to call it being human." Behind them, shouted from the engine room, "Captain, I think I have got the main power back online. We should have enough energy to keep life support running for at least another day." A wave of relief swept through the ship. Crew members embraced each other, tears flowing from their compound eyes. For the first time in 47 cycles, they believed they might actually survive. But the joy was short-lived, because at that exact moment, his voice came through the communication system, cold and urgent. "We have a problem. Long-range sensors are picking up multiple contacts approaching our position, dozens of them, and they are moving fast." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Commander Riven's wings snapped open in alarm. Then she whispered, "They have found us." Fear spread through the quiet dawn like ice through water. The crew, who had just begun to hope again, now stood frozen in terror. Their wings trembled. Their eyes grew wide. Some began to pray to their ancient gods. Commander Riven grabbed his arm. "You must leave. Now take your ship and go." "Did not move. What are the hunters, killers? They travel in swarms and attack disabled ships. They take everything, the metal, the fuel, the—" Riven could not finish the sentence. "No one survives when the come." "How many?" His voice came through the communicator again. "I count 37 ships, small, fast, heavily armed. They will reach us in 18 minutes. Closed her eyes for a brief moment. She thought about warnings before they left. She thought about all the sensible reasons not to come here. Then she opened her eyes and looked at the frightened around her. "How long until we can get your engines working?" she asked. The young engineer ran calculations in his head. "The main drive is completely destroyed, but I can maybe connect our portable reactor to your secondary thrusters. 30 minutes at least." "We do not have 30 minutes." "I know." Turn 2, the gun turret on the Hope. Is it working? "Yes, but one turret against 37 ships. That is not a battle. That is suicide." "Then we better make every shot count." She looked at the crew, at their hopeless faces. "We are not leaving. We came here to save you, and that is what we are going to do." Commander Riven stared at her in disbelief. "Captain, you do not understand. That cannot be fought. Entire fleets have tried and failed. You have one small freighter with one weapon. You cannot win this battle." Smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had accepted what was coming and decided to face it anyway. "Commander, where I come from, we have a saying. It is not about winning. It is about not giving up." She began giving orders with calm authority. "Get to the gun turret. Target their lead ships first. If we can slow down the front of the swarm, we might buy some time." Nodded and ran toward the Hope. His face was grim but determined. He had been in battles before. He knew how to fight. "I need those engines online as fast as possible. Forget about doing it properly. Just make them work." Was already running to the engine room, tools clanging in his belt. "I will try, but Captain, I am going to need help." Turn 2, can your engineers work with him? The old chief engineer hesitated for only a second. Then he straightened his wings and nodded. "We will do what we can. Show us what you need." As and disappeared down the corridor, addressed the rest of the crew. "Everyone else, I need you to seal every door and prepare for boarding. They will try to get inside. We have to stop them." "With what?" a young asked, his voice shaking. "We have no weapons." Looked around the corridor. She saw pipes, tools, metal panels, not weapons but close enough. Anything that can hit, cut, or block. Use the furniture, the walls, whatever you can find. When they come through, we meet them at the door and we do not let them pass. Stepped forward. Captain, we are scientists, not warriors. We have never fought anyone. Neither had I once, replied. But sometimes the universe does not give you a choice. Sometimes you have to become more than you were. The next 10 minutes were chaos. Crew members tore apart their own ship, creating barricades and makeshift weapons. They worked side by side with, following her instructions, feeding off her energy and courage. Fear still showed in their eyes, but now it was mixed with something else. Purpose. Outside, the swarm grew closer. On the scanner screens, they looked like a dark cloud moving through space. Each ship was small and angular, covered with what looked like scales of living metal. They made no attempt to communicate. They did not need to. Their intentions were clear. Reached the gun turret and strapped himself into the seat. The targeting system lit up, showing him the approaching enemy. 37 ships, 1 gun. The mathematics were terrible. But mathematics had never stopped him before. I am in position, he reported through the communicator. Wait until they are in optimal range, she replied. We cannot waste ammunition. The ships came closer. Could see them now through the turret window, dark shapes against the darker void. They flew in perfect formation, like predators hunting prey. He had seen many terrible things in his life as a soldier, but something about them made his skin crawl. 10,000 kilometers, 8,000, 6,000. Now said. Pulled the trigger. The plasma cannon roared to life, sending bolts of burning energy into the swarm. The first shot hit a ship directly in the center, and it exploded in a flash of fire. The second shot clipped another ship, sending it spinning into its neighbor. Both vessels crashed and burned. The swarm scattered for a moment, confused by the sudden attack. They had expected easy prey, not resistance. But they recovered quickly. The remaining ships split into smaller groups, coming at the 2 vessels from multiple directions. They were fast, much faster than the gun turret could track. Fired again and again, sweat dripping down his face. He hit 4 more ships, then 5, but for every one he destroyed, 2 more slipped past his fire. They are getting through, he shouted. I cannot stop them all. In the engine room, worked like a man possessed. His hands bled from sharp metal edges. His lungs burned from the smoke of melting cables. Beside him, and 3 other engineers handed him tools and followed his rapid instructions. Connect this to the auxiliary power coupling, ordered. No, not there, here, yes, that one. The engine made a groaning sound, like a sleeping giant waking up. Power lights flickered on the control panel. How much longer? His voice came through the communicator. 7 minutes, maybe 8. We do not have 8 minutes. An explosion rocked the ship. They had started firing at the quiet Dawn's hull, trying to breach the weakened metal. Alarms screamed from every speaker. In the main corridor gripped her makeshift weapon, a metal pipe with a sharpened end. Around her stood a dozen, their wings folded tight, their bodies tense with fear and adrenaline. Remember, she told them, they are not invincible, they can be hurt, they can be stopped. Do not think about how many there are, just focus on the one in front of you. A terrible sound echoed through the ship, metal tearing, something forcing its way inside. Here they come, whispered. The wall at the end of the corridor exploded inward, and the first poured through the hole. They were nightmares made flesh, 6-limbed creatures covered in metallic scales, with claws like knives and jaws that dripped with something dark. They moved with horrible speed, climbing over walls and ceiling like insects. For one frozen moment, everyone stared at the monsters, then raised her weapon and charged forward with a scream that echoed through the dying ship. And inspired by the tiny human female running towards certain death, charged with her. The battle was chaos and blood and fire. Swung her metal pipe with all her strength, striking the first across its head. The creature stumbled but did not fall. Its claws slashed at her, tearing through her sleeve and drawing blood from her arm. She felt the pain but did not stop. She could not stop. Behind her, the fought with desperate courage. Smashed a data tablet into his face. Used a heavy wrench like a hammer, driving back two attackers. Even the youngest crew members, those who had never raised a hand in anger, grabbed whatever they could find and fought for their lives. The corridor became a war zone. Bodies pressed together in the narrow space. Screams and roars mixed into a single terrible sound. They kept coming, climbing over their fallen companions, driven by hunger and rage. Felt her strength fading. She was bleeding from cuts on her arms and shoulders. Her lungs burned. Her muscles ached. But every time she wanted to give up, she looked at the fighting beside her and found the will to keep going. Outside the ship was fighting his own battle. The gun turret spun wildly, tracking ships as they swarmed around the two vessels. His fingers never left the trigger. Explosions lit up the darkness of space like fireworks. 12 ships destroyed, 15, 18. But more kept coming. They were like insects attacking a wounded animal, too many to count, too persistent to stop. Several ships had attached themselves to the quiet Dawn's hull, cutting through the metal with their claws and weapons. Could not hit them without damaging the very ship he was trying to protect. He shouted into the communicator, "We are running out of time." In the engine room's hands were shaking, not from fear but from exhaustion. He had been working without rest, connecting cables and routing power, trying to bring the dead engines back to life. Beside him, the engineers worked with equal desperation. "One more connection," muttered, "just one more." He reached deep into the machinery, touching wires that sparked with dangerous energy. The pain was immediate and sharp. He felt electricity run through his hand, up his arm, into his chest. For a moment, his heart stopped. Then it started again, and the engines roared to life. "I did it," he whispered, not quite believing his own words. "I did it." He grabbed the communicator with burned fingers. "Captain, engines are online. We can jump to faster than light, but you need to get everyone to the ship now." Back in the corridor, heard the message and felt a wave of relief. But they were everywhere, blocking the path to the docking port. They could not retreat. They could not escape. Unless someone stayed behind. The thought came to her clearly, without fear or doubt. It was simple mathematics. If someone held the line, the others could escape. If someone stayed, everyone else could live. She looked at Commander Riven, who was bleeding from a wound on her side but still fighting. "Take your crew and go. Get to the engine room and prepare for the jump." Riven understood immediately. Her compound eyes widened with horror. "No, we will not leave you." "You have to," pushed another back with her pipe. "Your people need you, get them home." "Captain, you will die." Smiled even as blood ran down her face. "Maybe, but you will live. That is what matters." Before Riven could argue, a new sound filled the ship. Heavy footsteps, running fast, appeared at the end of the corridor, carrying a cutting torch in one hand and a metal shield in the other. He crashed into them like a storm, throwing them aside with pure strength and rage. "Nobody is staying behind," he growled. "We all go together or we all stay together. Those are the only options." He reached and stood beside her, shield raised against the attacking creatures. Behind them appeared as well, armed with nothing but a wrench and a stubborn expression. "The engines will hold for 60 seconds before they need final calibration," said. "We have 1 minute to get everyone to the Hope." 1 minute. It seemed like an impossibility, but the three humans looked at each other and nodded. They had done impossible things before. Charged forward again, creating a path through and followed, pushing crew members ahead of them. The creatures fought back, slashing and biting, but the humans absorbed the blows meant for their alien companions. 50 seconds. They reached the docking port. The Hope waited on the other side, its engines already humming. One by one, they rushed through, helped by hands both human and alien. 40 seconds. Commander Riven stopped at the airlock door. "Where is?" Looked back. The young pilot was lying on the floor, her wing torn, unable to move. 3 stood between her and the door. 25 seconds. Without thinking, ran back. She had no weapon anymore. Her body was broken and bleeding. But she ran anyway because that was all she knew how to do. She grabbed and pulled her toward the airlock, screaming at the that tried to stop her. Met her halfway, his shield blocking the creatures long enough for her to drag the wounded pilot through the door. 15 seconds. The last went through, followed, was already at the controls, his burned fingers dancing over the console. 5 seconds. Threw herself through the airlock just as the doors slammed shut behind her. She landed hard on the floor of the Hope, still in her arms. "Go," she whispered, "go now." Hit the final command. The 2 ships separated, tearing free from the still clinging to the hull. The engines screamed with power they were never designed to produce. And then they jumped. The stars stretched into lines of light. The darkness of the hollow expanse disappeared, replaced by the brilliant glow of faster-than-light travel. The swarm was left behind, their prey vanishing before their eyes. In the cargo bay of the Hope, 37 people lay tangled together, bleeding and exhausted but alive. Humans and strangers who had become something more. Commander Riven found slumped against a wall, barely conscious. The human captain's wounds were severe. Blood covered her face and hands, but she was smiling. "We made it," whispered. "We actually made it." Riven knelt beside her and took her hand gently. "You saved us, all of us. I do not know how to thank you." "You do not have to thank me." Eyes were closing, heavy with exhaustion and pain. "You would have done the same." Riven was not sure that was true. She was not sure any species in the galaxy would have done what these 3 humans had done. They had risked everything, fought impossible odds, and refused to give up even when death was certain. It was madness, it was beautiful. 3 days later, the Hope limped into space, escorted by a fleet of rescue ships that had finally come to help. The story of the rescue spread quickly, passing from ship to ship, planet to planet, until the entire galaxy knew. A lost crew had sent a distress call into the darkness. No one had answered. No one except 3 humans in a tiny, battered freighter. Commander Riven gave testimony before the Galactic Collective. She described everything she had witnessed, the courage, the sacrifice, the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The delegates listened in silence, unable to believe what they were hearing. When she finished, there was only one question. Why had the humans come? Riven thought about Story, about the fisherman saved from the cold ocean, about the stranger who had turned his boat around. She thought about the darkness between stars and the small fires that kept it at bay. "They came," she said finally, "because that is what they are. They are the fire in the darkness. They are the answer to the cry for help. They are human." Captain was offered great rewards, citizenship in the Republic, wealth, fame. She refused everything except fuel and repairs for her ship. "There is a lot of space out there," she explained with a tired smile. "Someone else might need help." And so the Hope departed once again, carrying 3 humans back into the stars. Behind them, they left a galaxy that had learned something new about the universe. In the cold darkness between worlds, there was light. And that light was called humanity.